The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on the Nova Society are those of our guests and panel members and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of any institution any member of the Nova Society is associated with. The material information presented on the Nova Society is for general information purposes only. Reproduction or dissemination for the purpose other than education is prohibited without express written consent of the Nova Society. We'd like to welcome everyone back to the Nova Society, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. As most of our listeners know, we record our sessions on Friday, and we did record one on Friday that we have yet to post. And of course, a lot of news happened over the weekend. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a combination of clips. The first one being from Friday, before the news of Biden dropping out of the race being decided, and then we're going to play a clip from Monday when we met to discuss the news of the weekend. So it's interesting to see what our predictions were and how they actually played out. So let's listen in.
So, President Biden has COVID. And what else could go wrong? Well, I can think of a lot else that could go wrong, but I don't even want to start. And the second part of that is that senators are now publicly calling for President Biden to step down. And do we have any new thoughts on that? And I know, Scott,
I have old thoughts.
Okay. Well, Scott,
it's like zombie ideas. We have zombie ideas as regards
zombie
to this.
ideas. Yeah.
But only been. How long have I been on this podcast? I think I've been saying it for 2 years now.
Like 2 years now. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's a hot prediction. Biden will drop out of the race this weekend by Monday. He's dropping out. And Kamala Harris will not get his endorsement, but there will be an open convention that any other Democrat who wants to jump in can join in. And they have between now, the next few weeks, between now and the convention, to whip up a campaign that will, of course, it's not a primary, so all they need is the delegates, but to convince the delegates that they are the right person for the job and that Biden will turn over his delegates to whomever wins that very brief but intense contest.
What are your thoughts on the wisdom of Biden, if your prediction is correct, of President Biden's not endorsing President Harris and not resigning now and not permitting Vice President Harris to become President Harris now?
Yeah, so I think he wants to finish his term. As I said last week, getting the keys from Dad is one thing. Asking Dad to move into a nice home where he can get all the rest he needs is yet another thing. And this is that other thing. So he's not resigning. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that it would be that he would consider it small d democratic to anoint his successor while he is still president. And therefore, there needs to be a process. And I'm not sure who would be jumping in at this point to do this. My guess is Gavin Newsom probably would. It's certainly possible that everybody rallies around Kamala Harris and the party is unified before the fact. Nobody jumps in at all. But that's the offer that's going to go out there. Is that anybody can run who wants to, in the brief time available to them, to convince the delegates that they are the right person for the job, and that the end game of this would be to have a unified party behind Kamala Harris even after this process, which I think few people who could win it would jump in to win it.
Mark?
Oh, it's a Scott prediction. So, so I don't know. It would be nice if that happened this weekend. I mean, after the debate, I basically said 7 to 10 days he had, and we're a little beyond that point right now. But it has to happen soon. I would like to see him step down as the president, let Kamala Harris move. I think that's a more elegant solution to this, maybe a solution that would work better. Because if he steps down, then it doesn't look like you've taken the democratic process of the primaries and thrown it out the window. The person that is who has the delegates basically isn't running anymore. And that creates that elegant situation where now the delegates are free to vote the way that they want to vote, which I think is important. I don't think this is going to be an Aaron Sorkin moment. The author of The West Wing. It would be nice. It would be really, really nice if it was, but it's not. This is going to be a mess. And if the Democrats really want to win this race, and I'm sure that they do, then they really have to get their act together. And they do, as Scott said, they have to show a united front, and they have to be willing to galvanize behind one person. I truly believe that those discussions are happening now. More United States senators are publicly calling for Biden to step aside. And I think that those are those serious discussions that are happening. Unfortunately, Biden, when he talked to Pelosi, according to reporting, was very defensive about the whole thing. As Scott said, easy to, and it really isn't easy taking dad's car keys away sometimes, but getting them to move into the home is really hard. But the fact is that that's where it sits right now. I know that I said, last year or 2 years ago when we were talking about the upcoming race, that I believe that Trump stood no chance, that the Democrats were going to win. I have to admit, right now, I see it the other way. And it is all going to be just how well the Democrats handle this situation. Now's the chance to lead. And those people that are leaders in the Democratic Party have to come forward, have to start leading, and have to take the bull by the horns in some way or another. Even if Biden doesn't step down, even if Biden doesn't leave the race, there are situations, and it is historical, where party conventions were held after a primary or whatever, and dark horses were selected because they couldn't come to a decision. People that nobody expected to be nominated for the presidency. Benjamin Harrison is one that comes to mind, I believe, if I remember correctly. Nobody expected him. He came out of nowhere. But there is historical precedent for it. I think that would be the far more messier situation, especially in a technology era where everything is known and is seen all the time. I think that makes it far more messy. I think if it looks like it's orderly, it's sort of like a retreat. If it's an orderly retreat, it doesn't become a rout. So I'll go back to the military history of it. If the Democrats have a disorderly retreat, it generally will become a rout. And I think that their best move is get those generals in there and do that orderly retreat and then create a counteroffensive to be able to go forward.
How much of an effect do you think President Biden's having COVID will have on the whole situation here?
Honest to gosh, if it wasn't bad luck, the man doesn't have any luck at all. I mean, talk about crappy. I mean, sometimes you got to look and you got to say, somebody's telling me something here. No, wait a minute, somebody's telling me.
I don't want to be cynical about this, but it does occur to me that this is a very convenient out for Biden. If you're going to leave a race and try to explain why you did so poorly in a debate, that COVID is I guess a reasonable explanation for that, but I don't want to be cynical.
I don't think it's being cynical, Scott. I think it's, it is. It's an out, and it's a good out. I mean, it's a little tough to say, well, I had pre-COVID back when it wasn't really a cold, but of course they did say he had a cold, which I don't think anybody believed. But now that they've come out and said that, hey, he's got COVID, now the story becomes a little bit more plausible, maybe not totally, but a little bit more plausible. And to me, like I say, it's a good out. And time for the Democrats to regroup, because I'll tell you, watching the RNC convention was frightening. It was truly frightening. So that section was from a recording on Friday, July 19th, 2024. Let's now move to the recording session on Monday, July 23rd, where we discuss the news of the weekend. So let's listen in. What do you think about Biden dropping out? Of course, we know about that. Who do we think Harris's vice president might be? And do you see any legal challenge? The Republicans are saying that this is flying in the face of the democratic process. What do we think about that? And do you think there's going to be a lot of lawsuits? What's the other thing?
I heard what Speaker Mike Johnson said. Oh, this isn't democratic. Oh, there should be lawsuits and all this and all that. And Trump was saying, I forget, he was grieving and griping about something. Oh, all the money the RNC had spent, and he wants a refund.
Yeah. Anyway.
I mean, I guess litigators are going to litigate, right? So there'll be some.
Yeah, I don't think
some
that's
litigation.
I mean, I personally don't, I mean, the nominee hasn't been selected yet, so I don't follow what there is to litigate exactly.
Right.
President Biden has released his delegates, supported his vice president, but as far as I can tell, the delegates are free to choose whomever they wish, and I haven't heard what Alan Leishman of the Keys to the White House has said, but I can imagine that he's probably jumping all over the place because of his recommendation that President Biden resign and President Harris now.
So that is a scenario that we have discussed here, and it would probably be a great help to her on one level to become the president, but there is a complication there. According to the 25th Amendment, the vice president nominee needs to be approved by both houses. And there's no way that the House would approve a vice president. So Biden has to remain president. Kamala Harris has to remain vice president. Whatever the mix is going to be for them to be active in the day-to-day running of the country, they're going to remain in the positions that they are, because there really is no chance that Mike Johnson would confirm a nominee for vice president before the next election.
That's a good point. I hadn't even thought of that. Well, then I do know, I have heard that Vice President Harris has said that she intends to earn the nomination. She doesn't expect simply to be handed the nomination. So what are your thoughts? That sounds like an open convention.
Well, sorry, Mark, I'll let you speak in a second.
No, go ahead.
The way it looks to me is that the people that we have discussed as possibilities for this nomination are Gretchen Whitmer, who has endorsed Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, who has endorsed Kamala Harris, Josh Shapiro, who has endorsed Kamala Harris and is probably one of the top 3 finalists for vice president, and that the only one who kind of came out and said, I think I'll run against her, was Joe Manchin, who now says that he's not doing that. And it was kind of a Joe Manchin thing to do yesterday. He was on the morning talk shows on Sunday morning, at least 2 of them that I saw, saying that the time has come to pass the torch to a new generation. And then 6 hours later said, I'm running for president. And he's 77 years old. He's not the new generation. So
He's
I don't
also
know
not
where
a Democrat anymore. Sorry to
he's
cut
not
you
even
off.
a Democrat.
Yeah,
right.
so he can't be the nominee. You forgot
Yeah.
about that.
He would have to re-register. He would have to go back to the people hat in hand and say, they threw me out of West Virginia, but I think I can win the presidency for the entire country. I don't really see that being a very compelling argument.
No.
No.
And one of the statements that Manchin made when he was doing his interview, Caitlin Collins asked him, would you consider being the vice president to Kamala Harris? And he goes, nobody needs to have a 77-year-old vice president. And she goes, so then why do we need a 77-year-old president? And then he kind of like fumbled over that little thing. But I think one of the things that gets me is, first of all, this idea that this is undemocratic. And I've heard that so many times. Well, there was a primary and Joe Biden was selected, and this takes that out of the democratic process. This is coming from the party that has promoted more voter registration restrictions on people in states than has ever happened since the end of the Civil War and prior to it. So the hypocrisy to me is absolutely off the scale when it comes to the Republicans. I think the best way to frame this, and sometimes you see the headline, a convicted felon now battles the prosecutor. I mean, talk about the Rocky movie moments. That really is exactly what we're talking about here. I think my only fear, when there was the primaries in going into 2020, I admit I liked Harris right from the beginning. I liked Harris better than I did Biden, but she fizzled very quickly after that one moment she had at the debate. She kind of fizzled. Now, hopefully, Now we're talking serious stuff, because I do believe she is the nominee. I agree with Scott that pretty much anybody that would have been able to run against her has already said, no, we're going to circle the wagons and we're going to get behind the vice president. So I think that's just a foregone conclusion. Yes, she still does have to earn it with the populace. There's no doubt about it. I truly believe that they have done some political malfeasance in keeping her kind of in the shadows the whole time. But then again, who expected this to happen? I don't know. And vice presidents really are never at the forefront anyway. I mean, that's just kind of, I think somebody mentioned that it wasn't worth a pile of spit to be the vice president of the United States. And I know we've talked about him before. I think he was from Texas. The fact is that this is going to be your nominee. She is capable. She is very, very smart. And she is getting the machine that Biden had. She's getting his advisors. They sent out a memo to him. You had a job yesterday, you have a job tomorrow. So they're relying on this. And I think that these advisors, who are also pretty smart, now have something they can actually work with. And as long as Kamala Harris is willing to work with them, and I think she is, because I think she knows what's at stake, I think it's gotten very interesting as of right now. Another interesting thing came. I know that I said, and we will be publishing some of the conversations we had on last Friday. We are not doing it now, only because now they're not timely, because we were talking about this possibly happening over the weekend. But I said that the debate, Kamala Harris is in, Trump would have to do the debate, has to. Now they're saying, well, she's not really the nominee just right now. Therefore, let's wait and see. We don't want to debate somebody who's not a nominee. So that may mean it's going to push it out, which is perfectly fine. I think that's a benefit to Harris. I think it hurts Trump. It'll be interesting to see when the convicted felon once again stands before the prosecutor on a debate stage, and somebody that actually goes after him.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think Trump understands that, and that's why he was up in, I don't know what time, early in the morning, complaining even about the venue for that debate, that it needs to be switched from ABC to Fox, because it's not fair that he's going to have to debate the moderators as well as the opponent. I think that signals that he's a little nervous about her.
And he should be. He really should be. Yeah, we watched the Senate hearings when some of Trump's Supreme Court nominees were being confirmed. She does not hold punches, and she doesn't play. Everybody's always said the problem with Democrats are they're too nice. They play too nice. Well, I think that new generation is going to come in, and you're going to see a little bit of fighting fire with fire. Now, you're not going to see, the absolute crap bullshit that comes out of some of the Republican sides, the conspiracy theories and things like that. You're not going to see that, but you're going to see somebody that is capable of standing toe to toe. And I think that this is the one candidate of all of them that intimidates Trump the most. She's a woman of color. And if there's one thing he is not good at standing up to, are those two things. So I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and she's kind of a one of these whip smart types. She's very smart, got a good mouth on her. She's got a little bit of an edge to her. Look, I mean, she's given it to him before. She did vote to confirm Jim Mattis as Trump's first defense secretary and get him the exemption to the federal law that bars retired military officers from serving as Secretary of Defense. But she voted against Pompeo. She voted against Rex Tillerson. She voted against Mark Esper. She voted against Gina Haspel. She voted against Mike Pompeo again when he went from the CIA to the State Department. She is not afraid to take on people. And, she when she was in the Senate, she was only there for 4 years, but she was on the Senate Intelligence and Homeland Security committees, and she made a lot of trips as a senator. She went to Afghanistan and Iraq and Jordan and Israel. She's got good chops for foreign policy. She's going to be hammering Trump on his foreign policy, which is, a lot closer to Neville Chamberlain than Winston Churchill.
It's starting to get fun. Now it's fun. So that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this week's episode, the Phoenix Research Group, an independent research consortium offering social issue solutions to NGOs and international government agencies through multidisciplinary, nonpartisan, and unbiased research. We'd also like to thank our podcast partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Podkite, who does all our analytics, iHeartRadio, where people get their music and podcasts, Apple iTunes, the largest source of music and podcasts on the internet, Spotify, the most popular source for the Nova Society. The Nova Society is available on all these and other quality platforms mentioned in our description. We'd like to thank our listeners. Without you, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a comment, a question, or would like to be a guest on the Nova Society, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. Always remember, the power of society is knowledge. So for Dr. Scott Gershworth, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Be well, and we hope to see you again next time.